Hi everyone, welcome to Mental Melodies. This is your host, Carmen Bradley. I'm going to start today's episode with a song and I'll tell you why afterward. So this is Manic Monday, take two. 6 o'clock already, I was just in the middle of a dream. I was kissing Valentino by a crystal blue Italian stream. Well, I can't be late because I guess I just won't get paid. These are the days when you wish your bed were already made. It was just another manic Monday. I wish it were Sunday, 'cause that's my fun day. My I don't have to run day. It's just another manic Monday. Have to catch an early train, I gotta be to work by 9. And if I had an airplane, I still wouldn't make it on time. 'Cause it takes me so long just to figure out what I'm gonna wear. Blame it on the train, but the boss is already there. It was just another manic Monday. I wish it were Sunday, 'cause that's my fun day. My I don't have to run day. It was just another manic Monday. I'm just going to keep my guitar while I talk for the first segment. Thank you for being here. Thank you for subscribing and listening and following and commenting. Please keep doing those things. Please keep sharing if you haven't shared. I don't know how many people are sharing. I have a tendency to not really check up on those things. I just come here and do my thing and then prepare for the next show. I was reflecting a lot after last week, and I guess I could tell you about my process in general. I reflect and prep for the episode all week. Pick a song or write a song, practice the guitar, practice my singing. There is a lot of work that is going into it, and the last couple weeks I've been sharing how I've been feeling pretty run down lately, even to the point of having breakdowns at work. And if I reflect back on the first couple episodes and when we first tried to do the reel and I was feeling really overwhelmed, I had to really take a step back and reevaluate things, which is something that I said in last week's show. And having that show with Joshua Dagan here was really enlightening for me because it kind of forced me to grow up, I think, in a sense, and to really think about what I valued and why I'm here and what kind of content I want to put out there. And despite all this really positive feedback, I'm still at the beginning and I still really, really want to grow. And so one thing I'm doing is shifting so I can sing at the beginning, because what I noticed last week is that when I was trying to sing at the end, I was really feeling a lot of things emotionally. And that's something that I needed to be honest about. And especially when I bring a guest on, there is a different kind of exchange of energy that happens. And there were some really heavy things that JD brought up last week. He brought up suicidal thoughts, suicidal attempts, big shifts in his life, existential crises, mental health crises, a long-standing bipolar disorder diagnosis. Listening to that is not an easy thing. When I was a therapist, I went through these moments where I had to really be honest about how the job was affecting me. And part of the reason why I walked away from that job was because I felt that I had kind of gone into it because of my own trauma, and I was reliving some traumas while I was sitting there with my clients, and I wanted to walk away from my own trauma. And so much was happening in life in the beginning of the year that it was impossible for me to manage it all, and that was the one thing that had to drop. And as I was talking to my uncle and he was bringing stuff up about moving away from things that you've given so much time and energy to, that is really, 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 really challenging. And something that I wrote about in that song Sometimes, that was the first original that I played on that show, was about this like inner voice. And so the lyrics are, sometimes you're pushed harder and harder, sometimes you're told louder and louder. And that really does happen to me when I know that there's something that isn't good for me that I need to let go of. I'll know it for quite some time before I make that decision. And over time, it's gotten easier. I make the decision much more quickly. And I've noticed that when I do make that decision much more quickly, what happens is I find peace much more quickly. Because when you're holding on to things you're not supposed to hold on to, I have been feeling extremely chaotic. And there's literally multiple voices in my head. And one symptom of it that presents a lot, like in the therapy room, for example, or just in conversation, if you're going back and forth a lot about a decision, that's often a sign that you need to just walk away from the thing that's causing the problem. And that's an overgeneralization because there's so many things that I could be talking about right now. But the gist of it was that I kind of had this awakening in the last week where I really realized that even though I've said this on my show multiple times, where I was like, music is my thing and I need to focus on it, and I really want to put a lot of energy into this show, I wasn't putting as much energy as I wanted to because I was working so much. And so eventually I just broke down, my body broke down. I had to reevaluate whether or not me calling myself a night owl was me just making excuses for smoking too much weed at night. And I have, in the past just a week, shifted my whole day. So it's interesting because when I think about the show shifting from a simple thing, from playing the song at the end to playing at the beginning, it feels like a microcosm of the shift that I did in my life. And I notice things like this all the time, where it's like the same thing is happening, it just looks different. So in my life, I have shifted from staying up all night to waking up in the morning and having my time to practice my guitar, learn a new song, write a song, whatever, in the morning. And I had to overcome the first few really terrible, really tumultuous days before I started to feel better. And it's really easy, and again, I feel like that's kind of a microcosm of something that happens when people are trying to heal from mental health issues in general, is that if you don't feel an immediate response, or it doesn't change after the first day that you decide to wake up in the morning, then it feels like maybe it's not worth it. And especially when you're in a state of overwhelm, it is really hard to, I think, talk yourself into waiting patiently. And there are so many things that are coming up right now that I realize I've said a lot on the show, but it's so important. And I'm sure as you're watching me, you're going to start watching me grow and evolve and change. And I think over time I'll stop repeating myself once I'm able to move past certain things that I've learned. When I say to you that patience is not just waiting, it's being able to be calm while waiting, I'm telling myself that because I'm freaking out and I'm wondering what's gonna happen or give it all away. I have this thing about just getting things and then giving them away, or getting money and giving it away. And I've learned that while sometimes that can be a sign of mania and I need to be sometimes a little less impulsive, at the same time I do very much abide by a simpler lifestyle. I try to anyway, and these are some of the things that I was learning when I was first learning about yogic philosophy. And I guess that's something that I haven't shared yet, is that I think a lot of people think that yoga is just the postures, but there's a whole almost religion attached to it. And one of the very first things that I learned from it was actually this concept of nonviolence, which has guided me for a very long time. And I like it because rather than anyway, I'm going on a tangent, but what I was trying to say was that, this idea of like simplicity and not having more than you need has been something that I've been learning about for a very long time. And it's actually something that as I've mentioned before, there's like a lot of things that I'm kind of reaping right now, to use like biblical language, right? You reap what you sow. And planting seeds is something that I have been talking about, and I really wanted to continue talking about today. And that was one of those things that I planted also around 5 years ago. So I told that story last week about, like, I was about to go on a date with my boyfriend at the time. We were on a motorcycle, and I had this weird epiphany. I was like, I have to go home because, I don't know, I thought I had $1 million idea. And I think I did, and I think in a way I was like living in the future, but I had to like plant that seed. And I believe in all of those things. Like, I think that you can have visions of your life, and I believe I've had very clear visions of my life for a long time. And again, I've stated, like, it's taken me 5 years to get to a point where I'm actually seeing those things happen. Like, I used to tell my students, I want to be on a TED Talk one day, and I just saw myself speaking in front of other people, and I saw myself on stages, and I saw myself talking about the things that I felt like I couldn't talk about as a kid, or couldn't talk about as a teacher, or just simply the things that like everybody wants to say, but you can only say them if you have like a platform for it or something. And there are more and more people saying the things that I say. You know, that's why I see the messages that I do on Instagram and Facebook. But I think that every person is saying it in their own way. And so therefore I am saying it because it's my time to say it, and I'm saying it in a way that's speaking to the people who are listening to me. And I think that that is just such a beautiful thing. So I definitely want to elaborate on planting those seeds. And so what I was saying was that back in that time, shortly after I had that little moment where I set up my studio, I told this story last week, but I set up the studio, and it was basically like I was setting up for this talk show, but I didn't really know that it wasn't happening for 5 years. And I decorated my wall, and I called it the Daily Intention. And I started trying to post stuff on Instagram, and it kind of fell through, but I still thought about it for a very, very long time, and I kind of worked on it in ways that, again, I think were even beyond my comprehension at the time. And one thing that I was forced to do at the time, whereas now I consciously do, is I had to let go of a lot of things, because I lost my teaching job, and I moved in with that guy, and I had to let go of a lot of stuff. And then we moved on a boat, and I had to downsize everything. And I was forced to learn about non-attachment, which is another yogic principle. And so I'm going to pause there, and we're going to take a break, and I'm going to pick up with that in the next segment.
Traditional TV is going away. Hollywood is starting to fade. People are demanding real stories from real people. Our voices are now being heard in our own way. Podcasts, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok Live are becoming the norm. Internet TV has now reached the highest demand in human history. Social media shows is now the new media of the century.
Now on digital and DVD.
Hit it.
Space Wars: Quest for the Deep Star is an epic sci-fi adventure.
Do what needs to be done.
An edge-of-your-seat wild ride.
We have company.
Tons of popcorn-munching fun. 5 stars. A love letter to the sci-fi films of the 70s and 80s. With plenty of action and fun for all. You need to see it. You really do.
The captain just decided it's time to go.
I am ready for a sequel. Experience a bold new adventure. Space Wars: Quest for the Deep Star.
A good old-fashioned adventure.
Now on digital and DVD. Now on digital and DVD.
Hit it.
Once again, Joseph Skoda, proud United States Air Force veteran. Hello, everyone.
Welcome back. This is the second segment of this episode of Mental Melodies. I am your host, Carmen Bradley. Once again, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for continuing to watch. Thank you for your support and your comments. I will reiterate this time after time because I just genuinely feel very grateful, and I feel that gratitude is something that's a part of that kind of catch and release in life. I'm being given a lot, and I want to give back a lot. I was talking about this idea of non-attachment, and before that happened, I had this idea this morning that I was like, I feel like I'm going to share some vulnerable stuff on my show today, but I wasn't sure. But anyway, before this 5-year period of making very clear decisions about who I wanted to be and where I wanted to go, on these behavioral, emotional, physical levels, almost I had to create the foundation for who I wanted to be on a day-to-day basis before I could figure out who I wanted to be as a professional, right? So even before I fully realized, because I had moments when I was living in that boat in Florida where my boyfriend at the time played guitar and I would sing, and I wanted to make something of it, and I felt very strongly about it, and I was like, let's practice. And he just wanted to do it willy-nilly, and that's fine. But for me, I just had this sense that there was something that needed to happen, and there was live music happening in Florida, and I was just picturing myself there. And then when I ended up moving to Las Vegas, I was supposed to move in with my mom actually, and she lives in Idaho. And last minute, I just had this idea, and I texted my grandpa. And I was like, I'm moving in with you. I'll be there in a couple of days. And it happened, and I came here, and one thing led to another. And now I see so clearly why it all had to happen that way. It's just insane. But anyway, I was talking about this idea of non-attachment. So prior to, like I said, that these moments where I started to really make a decision and start to really develop my own autonomy, I felt like in my early 20s, I was not really in charge of what I was doing. I was experiencing a lot of the stuff I've been experiencing in the last few weeks, but more intense and all of the time, day after day. Woke up feeling terrible, went to bed feeling terrible, was having panic attacks at work, couldn't control my emotions, was crying all the time, didn't have very good boundaries, couldn't maintain a relationship, all of these things. And I had a hoarding problem, which actually started, I think, when I was a kid, because I was never very good at organizing things. And my mom used to call me the disorganized genius, which has been something that has kept me. There's that nature-nurture argument of who are you versus how are you, what made you? And I've talked about this on the show before, why going back to that part of your life and really thinking through it, and even psychologically delving into those memories is so important, because what you can do over time is you can start to shed away all the things that made you who you were, and you can start to become more of who you actually are. And I believe that there is something for everybody that is who they really are, and I also think that could change, and that you have to give yourself permission to let that change. And that's something that I've been thinking about this last week, with reevaluating how to spend my time and how much energy to devote to the things that, maybe something that isn't making me money right now, but that I believe will make me money later. Why should I dedicate to it? Just because I believe that I should. Just because it is growing. Just all of these things. And it's not even a just. It's true that all of these things are happening. So with the hoarding thing, I was talking about not being able to organize as a child, and I was always highly intellectual, but my space was something I couldn't figure out. When my mom told me to clean my room, it was I was the stuff in the closet kind of girl. It just didn't really matter to me that I knew where my bras were or whatever. And I was also that person, and I know plenty of people I think can relate to this, where I felt like I could find stuff better if I were a mess. If you clean my room, Mom, then I don't know where that thing was that was hiding under that chair on top of that thing, And so I had to, in the last 5 years of my life, literally teach myself how to do these like grown up things. And I think that that's something that maybe did fall short in my childhood. And I hesitate to blame my mom because I love her so much and I'm past that stage of my life. And but she didn't teach me. She was too nice to me. She let me be messy and like packed for me every single time that we moved to a different house and did all of these things for me that I think I needed to learn how to do on my own. But at the same time, I'm sure I have some memories of things I was really stubborn about. Like at a very early age, I decided I was going to do my own laundry, and I would get too angry at my mother if she did my laundry, and I would freak out about things like that, which is why as I think about my childhood, I start to want to diagnose myself on the autism spectrum, or like I want some kind of an answer for it, like why was I the way that I was, kind of thing. And I think that those things are valid, but at the same time, I want to get out of that realm in a sense, and that's something I was having trouble with over last week's episode. Because one thing I did want to do is give JD space to tell his story in his way and to state his perception of mental health in his way. And I was actually slightly surprised by his answer when he was talking about, if you watched last week, he was talking about humanity versus mental illness. I don't know if it was really like a competition, but he was talking about how I had asked him, like, how do you get out of those stages, and when do you decide, like, this could be in my control? Because he was talking about depressive stages where you just can't get up off the couch, right? Like, I literally just can't. And he was saying things like, I need some type of commitment or job, which for him is photography right now. And if you need headshots, look him up, Joshua Dagan, or anything, photo shoots, all that. He's absolutely amazing. But anyway, we were talking about that control that you have over these things. And I had been very adamant from the beginning of the show that one thing I want to state is that healing is real, and that I think that mental health diagnoses are very limiting, and that they often become forever when they don't have to be. Now, when I think about, obviously, some of the stuff that he brought up about like bipolarity, for example, and the evidence that it could exist in young children, you have to wonder, like, okay, where do you find the balance between the things that maybe you're born with versus the things that come out of trauma? And I just had such a strong belief that everything stemmed from trauma, that you could essentially go deep and take a really long time and heal from all of those things, and then it wouldn't be the case anymore. And I had seen evidence of that in my life, I think. But what came up for me the last few weeks was that humanity aspect, I think, that he brought up, where I had to be honest with myself about my own limitations. And I've talked about being honest about your limitations and figuring them out so that you can rise above them. Yes. But I cannot like work 40 hours a week, spend 40 hours a week on my music and all of these things, start a band and go do modeling gigs and go do acting gigs and maintain friendships and call my mom and my dad and walk my dog. I can't do all of those things. I know that because I tried to do all of those things in the last few weeks and I lost it. I was angry and irritable and I was crying at work and like wanting to call out. I literally could not manage all of those things. So I've been kind of like evaluating that, and obviously, I think one conclusion I have is that to some extent we're just expected to do too much, and I guess I wonder sometimes, like, when that sort of thing happens to me, like, am I just the one that can't handle it? Am I just the one who can't do all of it and I'm the one having breakdowns at work? Or like, is everyone not able to manage what life expects of us and like people are just not talking about it? You know what I mean? So anyway, I know there's more for me to learn, and I know that I'm going to continue to learn from my guests who are coming on the show too, because I studied, I have a master's in counseling. Obviously, I couldn't be a therapist without that. And I studied that for 7 years while I was going through all of my mental health issues. And I had a suicide attempt of my own in that time, and there was all of this crazy stuff happening. So I know a lot, and I've read a lot, but I also have really strong opinions that I know are biased from my own experiences. And so I think something that I've noticed that I guess I didn't really realize at the beginning of the show is that a lot of this stuff I'm going to be like learning as we go along, and that my opinions will probably change. And I think that that is awesome. I don't want to be the kind of person who, you know, makes a definitive statement in episode 1 when I'm just trying, and then I can't change my mind, or I can't grow in that. And I think that if I can't, then you can't either, you know. And I know that a lot of the things that I brought up are probably things that are things people haven't talked about before. And so your minds have to be open to that. So I want to keep an open mind to all of those things. Next week, I'm going to bring on another guest, and I've been thinking about the frequency of that, but I'm kind of just letting that go with the flow. But like I said, I want to be able to like hear other people's stories and learn from them. I also know to a degree that it is a very healing experience for them. And I know that, like I said last week when I was sitting here with JD and he was sharing things, he was experiencing, you know, emotions that came up. I want to make sure that I'm helping my guests to manage those emotions. So that's something that I've been thinking about. I did want to do another disclaimer, which I did in the beginning of the show, that I am not on this show as a mental health therapist. And that's mostly because, well, I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but I just have to disclaim that, because if it grows, when it grows even bigger, I want people to know, you know, you're coming on the show. I do have that experience. It will possibly feel that way. JC, when he came on, was like, I feel like I'm in therapy right now. So it can feel that way, but think of me more like Oprah and not a Nevada state licensed therapist. I do not want to get into long-term relationships with clients again where I feel responsible for them, or where I can't have a relationship with them either. That is not what I want. However, I do believe that I have skills and understanding and the ability to sit with people empathetically that I can use on this show. So again, as like a shout out to people who are maybe thinking about stories they want to share or things that they want to benefit from, maybe think about that. Reminder to reach out to me individually if you want to come on. And I'm going to take a little bit of a break right now, and I'll be back in a couple of minutes.
Traditional TV is going away. Hollywood is starting to fade. People are demanding real stories from real people. Our voices are now being heard in our own way. Podcasts, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok Live are becoming the norm. Internet TV has now reached the highest demand in human history. Social media shows is now the new media of the century.
Now on digital and DVD.
Hit it.
Space Wars Quest for the Deep Star is an epic sci-fi adventure.
Do what needs to be done.
An edge-of-your-seat wild ride.
We have company.
Tons of popcorn-munching fun. 5 stars. A love letter to the sci-fi films of the 70s and 80s. With plenty of action and fun for all. You need to see it. You really do.
The captain just decided it's time to go.
I am ready for a sequel. Experience a bold new adventure. Space Wars Quest for the Deep Star.
A good old-fashioned adventure.
Now on digital and DVD. Now on digital and DVD.
Hit it.
Space Wars Quest for the Deep Star is an epic sci-fi adventure.
Do what needs to be done.
An edge-of-your-seat wild ride.
We have company.
Hello, everyone. This is Joseph Skoda with Social Media Shows. Well, I thank all of you for your support through these last several years, and it's been a lot of fun. We've given people a voice they never had before. Now, Social Media Shows is always collaborating with our veterans to help them do things and help out the veterans who are struggling today. And we teamed up with GI Connections, connecting veterans with resources. So please consider helping and donating to this great cause because we're always doing things for veterans. So GI Connections, Social Media Shows, and you is what makes the world a better place. Once again, Joseph Skoda, proud United States Air Force veteran. Hello, everyone. This is Joseph Skoda with Social Media Shows. Well, I thank all of you for your support through these last several years, and it's been a lot of fun. We've given people a voice they never had before. Now, Social Media Shows is always collaborating.
Welcome back to the third segment of this episode of Mental Melodies. This is your host, Carmen Bradley. I am experiencing a little bit of a blank mind, which is not common for me, but I did have a thought about planting seeds, and I know that was something that I wanted to bring up, and I brought up briefly. And so it ties into what I've been talking about over past episodes about, manifesting things. And I guess I had been planting seeds in the last couple of weeks, and I had this interesting thing happen where every word started with the letter M. I'm not relying on my notes anymore, so I don't know if I remember each of them, but one of them was mornings, because I talked about I had to get my mornings back. I absolutely had to, because otherwise I would have totally lost it. And then music, obviously. So there was mornings, music, memories. There was a bunch more, but they all started with the letter M, and so does Mental Melodies. So I thought that was really cool, and it's just funny how things all come together. But one thing that I did think about, I had this image. I'm always manically writing things down as I prep throughout the week, and I had this kind of this image of when I'm let me backtrack. I think I've talked about this before, but the idea of manifestation, one of the techniques, there's different ways to phrase it, and again, everybody says it in their own way, so I hope that again, I'm saying it because people need to hear about it because they haven't heard it, or they need to hear it again, or I need to hear it again. But there's this idea that you are in that moment now. So I am a billion-dollar record holder now. I am an actress on Netflix now. I am a stand-up comedian who travels around the world now. I have a talk show host on a big network now. And you feel those things in the moment. And that is so very valid, and that is the way that it works. And there are so many people reiterating that and proving that. Jim Carrey is one of my favorite celebrities who talks about manifestation. And he said, there was something I saw of him the other day where he said he wrote himself $1 million check for being in a movie. And I can't remember the timeline, but it wasn't that long afterward that he got that money for being an actor. And he talks about how his dad was in, I can't remember what it was, but he basically was a really excellent musician, but he didn't want to believe that it could go anywhere. And so he stayed in his blue collar job for his whole life. And Jim Carrey, his son, watched him not be happy. And I'm not saying that you have to have crazy big dreams like I do in order to be happy. I think that you have to find your own purpose and create your own happiness. But I do think that it would behoove you to stay somewhere that you don't want to be, whether that's a relationship or a job or a reality or a home or a place. If you do have a feeling inside of you, if you have that voice pushing, speaking louder and louder, and you have that thing pushing harder and harder in your head, if you're not listening to that, then I think that at that point that's a choice. If you're aware of something inside of you telling you you're meant for more, or that there's some kind of change that needs to be made. And so I was talking about in the beginning of the episode, it used to take me a really long time. And it only took me a few days to when I really noticed that staying up till 5 in the morning working on my music was not the way to go, and that really what I was doing was feeding into fear, and what I needed to do was rest at night. And I had to continue to tell myself that rest is productive, which is a message that I think you really have to tell yourself over and over again, especially when you're stuck in that rat race. So in the last couple days, I looked at every single day in November and December and had 0 days for rest. 0. So I had to, again, evaluate, what do I need to take away? What can I take away? And how can I do this without being led by fear? And this is something I remember talking about in early episodes that I haven't brought up very much lately, about deciding what's going to drive you. And I had stated that I didn't want to be driven by fear, and I didn't want to be driven by guilt. And so I didn't even really think about that until now, but I know that that's kind of what was driving me in the last few weeks, was like fear of not having enough money, or, you know, thinking ahead to like, is my current gig at the Sphere not going to last a long time, and just being really afraid of that instead of being in the moment and trusting in the moment. So that brings me back to what I was saying about manifestation, where yes, you have to step forward and you have to believe in your visions. Like, I believe very strongly that there are things that are going to happen for me that I only saw glimpses of like 5 years ago, right? And I'm telling you now, like I see those coming to light. But there's also the very, I don't want to say real reality, but that's what came out. The very real reality of the present moment. So I can be manifesting that, you know, and I can sit back and I can feel that I've gotten to the place that I want to be, but I can't just sit in meditation forever, or, you know, like write down long-term plans every single day. I also have to manage my Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, my life that is now. And I have to be able to accept that while I'm feeling those things, and while I'm feeling them more and more and more, I'm still not there yet. And that's one of the most difficult things. And it's almost, I guess, every stage has its own difficulty, but in a way it's almost harder when you're closer. Because back then, when I was just planting seeds 5 years ago, and I was like kind of joking about it, but I was serious to my students, where, you know, we were watching a movie and I was like, I'm going to be in a movie one day, and like, you're going to see me up there. And I had started singing more at Don't Tell Mama down on Fremont, and I was telling them like, I'm going to be a singer. And then they watched me like get hired at Don't Tell Mama as a sub. They watched me say it and then do it and follow through on it, and they watched it happen. And as a teacher, I felt my most important role was to be a role model, and I thought that that was so important. And even leaving the profession with all the guilt that comes with that, I believe was something that those students needed to see too, because one day they might be in a profession they chose when they were 18, and they might think back on the fact that Miss Bradley left the teaching profession, even though that's scary, and decided to do something else. And again, like, if you have that voice telling you it's time to move on, it's time to move on. And maybe it's not time until the time that you decide. I don't know, I've been thinking about that too. But anyway, yeah, you have to manage that very real reality. And so, like I said, like 5 years ago, there were a lot of things that I was thinking and seeing, but I was like pretty excited about being in the moment, and I was just like, man, it'll happen, and it'll be so far away, and I believed in it. But now that it's closer, it's almost like there's more pressure, I think, in a sense, because it's like I have to keep up with the fact that I said I was gonna do all of these things. And I know myself, and I know that I couldn't give up on it. I don't see myself ever like losing my music, but there are moments where I'm just like, I wonder like why I couldn't just teach for 30 years and like collect retirement or whatever. And I guess that brings me back to like what I was saying about when you're a kid and like who you are before the world got to you. Like maybe I was literally born to be something, and you know, like maybe the little first grader that said she was going to be a pop star knew that then, you know, because kids are more connected to their intuition. So yeah, I just think that is very interesting. I'm drawing a blank again. I think I'm just processing. That's something that I did want to, I guess, address today in, I didn't explain why I sang in the beginning instead of the end, I don't think. And maybe I did, but anyway, I'll elaborate a little bit, because I was noticing that I was giving a lot of energy, and even right now I'm still not quite like recovered from the last few weeks. I was running on adrenaline quite a bit, and so I was doing a lot, and I really did have a lot of energy, but it wasn't like natural energy, and my body is slowly starting to say like, we need to hibernate. And I also believe that we do too much in the winter in general. I believe very much in like seasonal shifts, and that's something I also learned from yogic philosophy. There's I don't know if it's a philosophy or an approach, but it's called Ayurveda, and it's a way of seeing how the seasons affect you, and also how eating seasonally can help you to feel more connected, right? And so like the winter is a time to slow down. So the fact that I have 0 rest days planned, I planned them now, kind of. I'll get there, but that's not healthy ever, and definitely not like when things slow down and it's really time to kind of like reflect on the year. And one thing I was thinking about too was just the very quick sudden shift that I had from my life over the summer. I've mentioned on this show before that I had a very quick marriage and a very quick divorce, and it was very, very intense. I was in New York and it all blew up, and I was supposed to be focusing on acting and singing and performing, and I like hadn't really slept, and I had been like working 7 days a week for a couple of months, and I moved out September 1st. And since then, it was like I didn't even look back. I did process the story. I did talk about it. I did write a song about it. I did share it to all of my followers. But at the same time, I didn't like sit in it any longer. Once it was time to move on, I did. And I started pursuing things that I wanted to pursue and focusing on myself. And I was really allowing a lot of mantras to kind of keep me through that time. And I had a lot of just angels in my life, people that came and told me things that I needed to hear about how to not get distracted and how to be selfish, because that is something that as a giving person I've had to learn. And I really had to protect my energy and my space and take care of myself and find like my health again. So yeah, I was talking about singing at the end, and just thinking about like these episodes and how they really are a giving of energy, I think, and I do need to rest like after them. And when people come on, there is something that kind of happens within me when I am with somebody else and when I'm sharing that space. And it's kind of hard to describe, but like as a therapist, when I would see multiple people a day, I felt like I would go through this thing with them. And there are empaths in the world, and I am one of them. And so that's one trick I kind of had to learn, was to be able to be a vessel for something. So rather than holding on to somebody's sadness or grief or whatever it is they're feeling with me, I could give them space to feel it, and maybe even feel it in my own body, but let it pass through me. But what happens when I'm not resting enough is that I kind of hang on to that heaviness, and it's like I don't have the strength to take it on and also let it go. And so I really have to think about if I want this to be beautiful and professional and effective, and I want it to lead to great changes in mental health in our community and in schools, then I'm going to need to take care of myself so I can continue to show up with all of the energy that I want to give what I want to give. So we have one more segment, which means we have one more break. See you in a couple of minutes.
Hi, I'm Deacon T with Modern Word Ministries. It's great to be with you today. Just a short little promo for our show. Every Sunday morning we have service, and you can follow us at 10 a.m. Pacific Time on modernwordministries.org. And if you missed us or you want to see some of our older messages, go ahead and check us out on socialmediashows.com every single morning at 9 a.m. It's a great way to kick off your day, get a little bit of the word in you, get something uplifting, get you started off on your way. You know, if you're looking for prayer or you need some help, reach out to us. If you go to our website, again, ministries.org, you can interact with me via telephone, via DM, text message, whatever you want. I'll get right back to you. So if you need prayer, you need help, you just need somebody to talk to, Modern Word Ministries is here for you. We are your church in the community. So until you see you next time, be blessed, everybody. Bye-bye. Hi, I'm...
Traditional TV is going away. Hollywood is starting to fade. People are demanding real stories from real people. Our voices are now being heard in our own way. Podcasts, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok Live are becoming the norm. Internet TV has now reached the highest demand in human history. Social media shows is now the new media of the century.
Now on digital and DVD.
Hit it.
Space Wars Quest for the Deep Star is an epic sci-fi adventure.
Do what needs to be done.
An edge-of-your-seat wild ride.
We have company.
Tons of popcorn-munching fun. 5 stars. A love letter to the sci-fi films of the 70s and 80s. With plenty of action and fun for all. You need to see it. You really do.
The captain just decided it's time to go.
I am ready for a sequel. Experience a bold new adventure. Space Wars Quest for the Deep Star.
A good old-fashioned adventure.
Now on digital and DVD. Now on digital and DVD.
Hit it.
Space Wars Quest for the Deep Star is an epic sci-fi adventure.
Do what needs to be done.
An edge-of-your-seat wild ride.
We have company.
Tons of popcorn-munching fun. 5 stars. A love letter to the sci-fi films of the 70s and 80s. With plenty of action and fun for all. You need to see it. You really do.
The captain just decided it's time to go.
I am ready for a sequel. Experience a bold new adventure. Space Wars Quest for the Deep Star.
A good old-fashioned adventure.
Now on digital and DVD. Now on digital and DVD.
Hit it.
Space Wars Quest for the Deep Star is an epic sci-fi adventure.
Do what needs to be done.
An edge-of-your-seat wild ride.
We have company.
Tons of popcorn-munching fun. 5 stars. A love letter to the sci-fi films of the 70s and 80s. With plenty of action and fun for all. You need to see it. You really do.
The captain just decided it's time to go.
I am ready for a sequel. Experience a bold new adventure. Space Wars Quest for the Deep Star.
A good old-fashioned adventure.
Now on digital and DVD.
Welcome back, everyone. This is the last segment of this episode of Mental Melodies with your host, Carmen Bradley. I was talking about like why I switched from singing at the end to singing the beginning, and why I switched from staying up all night to waking up in the morning and all these different things. And I think like the gist of today is that you need to be honest with yourself. Again, about those limitations, I think, so that you can rise above them, like I've said, but so that also you can feel healthy and happy and calm. And I do not like feeling frantic. You know, I love being busy and having a lot of things and meeting a lot of new people and making a lot of money. I love making money because I love to spend money. but also give. And there are so many things I want to do with money. I just keep throwing that out into the universe because, yes, anyway, I think it has something to do with like, I talked about like microcosms in the beginning, and I'm not sure you understand that because it's one of those things that just like sometimes I have half-baked ideas, you know, just like my visions in the 5 years ago. I knew that they meant something, but now I understand it kind of thing. But I was talking about like taking on someone's emotions and being able to kind of be a vessel. And I think that there are people in this world who like are meant to have a lot of responsibility because they will do good things with it. Like I think about Monday's Dark, this concert that's held on Mondays at the Space. And there's just so many people there that they have a lot of money and they give a lot of money and they care about kids and they care about mental health and they care about autism. And that's something that I want to do in the future, is to partner with them so that I can make some of these visions happen for mental health in schools and stuff. And lately, I guess I've been a little bit stressed. Like I said, when you're closer to where you want to be, it feels a little bit overwhelming because I'm wondering, like, is this the time to pull the trigger on that specific thing, or am I living too much in the future? And it goes back to that idea that you need to manifest by feeling that you are what you want to be, but you also have to manage the moment. And with that comes like understanding when there might be an idea that you have and you might need to follow through on it now, or you might need to follow through on it later, which means also as simply like maybe not stay up all night, maybe do it in the morning, or maybe not do it this year, maybe do it next year. And that's something that I was talking about in the last segment of just I didn't finish my thought, but my thought was that I needed to give myself some grace because I had gone through all of that craziness in the summer, and then I just stepped into this new life and took one step after the other towards my dreams. And it's been challenging, but it's been lovely. And I've had this habit since like 5 years ago when I started doing all these things, which I'll get to over time. But I was really thinking about how to spend my time. And a lot of my freakouts would happen in a moment of like, I just didn't know what to do. Do I clean this thing? Do I write this thing? Do I work on my teaching? Whatever it was. And you have to rid yourself of a lot of clutter in order to be able to get to the point where you can feel that in every moment you are focusing on what you're doing rather than being frantic. And it kind of goes back to what I've said about like ADHD before and how you manage that. And I think part of it is I know I had this like attachment to things as a child that is very ADHD like, that I think some people can relate to. Like if I loved something, I loved it. Like I had 50, 100 Tweety Bird things. I had a shirt and I had a stuffed animals and I had bed sheets and all of these things. And then at some point I was obsessed with Despicable Me and I had 50,000 Minion things, and I love frogs. I still do. I have 2 pet frogs. But instead of having a pet frog and a million frog stuffed animals like I did as a child, I just have 2 frogs. And I can like manage that like love that I have for something. And there's this like emotional intensity I think that comes with ADHD or a mental illness or something. And that's something that I wanted to talk about, kind of going back to that, like what happened last week when I realized that I'm too tired at the end of an episode to sing a song. I need to start with the song and then talk because I'm just giving all of this energy away. And I'm glad that I wanted to get hung up on, oh, like you forgot your words, and this feeling that like I would always forget them. And I knew that wasn't true. And standing here in front of you feeling more grounded after the last week, I know that I'm capable of doing what I say I'm going to do. But you have to not be tired in order to be able to do the things you're capable of doing. And that is like just a simple truth. But something that one of my coworkers was saying to me when I was like bubbling up at work, I did a pretty good job of, I went there, maybe you've been to the Sphere and you've seen me, maybe not, but I stand in front of the robots and I help people talk to the robots, which is why I got these heeled shoes, because I have more authority, I feel like. And people will ask me, can I talk to the robot, instead of just cutting in, and I feel very much like a teacher again sometimes, which is kind of cool. But anyway, there was 2 days there where I was standing there and my emotions were so strong that I was literally fighting back tears, and I would have to like turn away and kind of like do this with my eyes and then look forward. And I don't think that you should be at work when you're feeling that way. But one of my coworkers was saying to me, like, I know that you have had this history of like being a therapist and doing yoga, and you know how to regulate your emotions. So I like wasn't really worried about you, but then at the same time I was. And that I kind of took that to heart, because I was thinking about all the things I know how to do to manage my emotions, like deep breath work or whatever. But like, again, to reiterate, you just because you know how to do those things doesn't mean they're going to work if there are so many things fighting against you. So I might know how to regulate my emotions, but I couldn't because there were so many unhealthy choices that I was making that I needed to reevaluate. So when it comes to like emotional regulation, I had this thought about like making sure that I kind of integrate that into episodes when I bring people on, because I was talking about when I had clients, and one thing that you have to make sure to do, that if you're in therapy and this isn't happening, please request it, that you start with something grounding, like a few breaths, and you end with something grounding, because a lot of the reason why people don't go back to therapy is because what it does is it actually activates them. So they go, this is what happened to me when I was in college, and I wanted to start to talk about some of the stuff that had happened to me. For one thing, I think it was a little too soon, right? I was like 18, and I went from having a lot of structure to having no structure. But I would go to try and talk about some of the things that happened not that long ago in my childhood, and I just felt awful. Like, I don't want to talk about these things. I want to finally like live my life and be away from it. And so I didn't go back. And what that did is it led to a buildup of things. And there were things happening that, again, I've talked about how like in my early 20s, I really felt like I wasn't in control very much. And interestingly enough, I was forcing a lot of control. And that's like where, I think I mentioned this in the first episode, about how like an eating disorder and OCD and all of these things are a way to control because you feel like you haven't had control. You're addicted to chaos, so you're trying to control things, but you're controlling the wrong things. I don't need to be counting calories every single day, right? I don't need to be going to the gym 7 days a week. I don't need to be worried that I don't have a six-pack, or like thinking constantly about how fat I feel. And I felt that for so many years, where there was this like loud banging thought at all times about what I had eaten that day, how I had eaten too much, how I looked fat in my outfit, how I could feel that I was fat. All of these thoughts, boom, 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 boom. Like, I don't know if any of you have experienced that, but I guess I'm trying to explain it to people who maybe haven't, and it is insane. Like, you have this whole life built around your body and your body image, and how nobody thinks that you're pretty and you don't think you're pretty and everything is wrong with you. And you're thinking about all that while you're also teaching high school and doing all the things that you have to do to be a person. That is insane. But that's a way that you are trying to find control. So I think like when you think about what my uncle was saying about getting stuck in these like depressive episodes, often I believe that that deep depression happens because you're running on that kind of like adrenaline, like I have been in the last couple weeks, whether it's an eating disorder or OCD, and you're trying to control things, and eventually your body is like, bro, like you have to stop, and it will shut you down. And so like you said, you can't get up, you can't do anything. And so that's where I think there's a lot to be said about managing like manic and depressive episodes. And for me, what that's been is this belief that those are more the natural shifts in our life, and that like if you follow the seasons and the moons, like I don't even feel I need to disclaim that anymore, right? You get more tired in the winter. Like if you're a woman, for example, if you follow what happens to you when you're on your menstrual cycle, it's like there's going to be a couple weeks where you need a little more rest, and there's going to be a couple weeks where you're feeling like a little more energy. And anyway, these are a lot of things where I feel like I'm getting into further episodes because I guess I want to close it in a little bit more just about today, and that like being honest. And when I think on like college times, like I brought up trying to go to therapy and stuff, there were some stories that came up in my mind that I thought I might share. I don't think I have time necessarily to share them, but I want to go back to this idea that I mentioned in the first and second episode about this duality. Like healing is real, and just because I'm told I have an eating disorder doesn't mean I have to have one forever. Now, there are mental disorders that, like I said, could be there from childhood and you have to manage them. But again, that goes back to like managing your limitations. But I also believe in choice. And like I said, if there's something telling you need to like leave something and you're not listening to it, you're making a choice. So I could continue to make the choice these last couple weeks to live in fear and to pursue my day-to-day habits because I'm afraid of these things. Or I can make a choice to feel that fear and sit back and change these small things I know I need to change, because I know in the long run they will lead me to where I want to go. And that all that you're doing when you're staying in those is like you're running in circles, right? You're not making any progress. And I think that's something we really have to think about. So I've had to let go of a lot of things in the last couple weeks, like a person and lots of clothes. I'm constantly just like purging stuff because I just don't want any of that. Like, I don't want any of my illnesses or negativity to be following me into like the next stage of my life. But again, there's that balance where, so I guess I will bring it up. I brought it up before, but I was diagnosed with lupus in 2013, and it's this autoimmune disease. And something that I decided earlier this year was that I would stop focusing on illness. And that's one of those manifestation tricks where you stop focusing on illness and then you can get healthy. But then I'm starting to feel things come up, and it's like I'm not in a space where lupus is my identity anymore, but I am in a space where I can say to myself, I cannot work as many hours as this person, and that is okay. And that's where, like, everybody's different, and that's cool, and we can all manage our own stuff. Anyway, that is it for today's episode. Please follow me on Instagram, Carmen_Bradley. Please also follow Mental Melodies Talk Show. I'm working on some stuff in the background right now so that we can kind of grow that platform, but just follow it and share it. When you see videos, share them, follow social media shows, and email admin@socialmediashows if you want to sponsor, and please specify you want to sponsor Mental Melodies. And if you want to be on my show, you can reach out to me through Facebook or Instagram, or you can email me, carmenbradley@gmail.com. And yes, any like professional things that you want to work with me on, whether it be modeling or acting, also you can reach out to me through Facebook and Instagram, or singing. If you want to see more of that, let me know. And I will see you next week. Thank you for being here. I love all of you.